I needed to sit down because it's going to be a long time before it's dark, and I'm going to have to sit down and take a break for a second. Let me just give you a real quick update on our church and how things are going there. I know Pastor just read our prayer letter. Those of you that were at the picnic yesterday, everybody was asking both my wife and I how we're doing. The only thing really that's going on with my leg now is I have a dent. So my leg goes down, it dents in, and then it comes back out, and then it goes down to the ankle and everything. So that's the only thing going on with my leg. But we sure appreciate your guys' prayers. And in my wife's hand, she has some nerve damage on one of her fingers, and we actually have a, I don't know what you want to call it, settlement proposal at Smith & Wesson that they initiated. And so I sent the 9mm to Smith & Wesson. They looked at it. They told us what they thought it was, and I wrote back, and I'm like, they said it was an overcharged round. And I'm thinking, well, the only thing that blows up on a gun is the bullet. There's nothing on the gun that can explode. If you have no bullets in there, it can explode. And so I wrote that on the letter, and I said, well, yeah, obviously it was the round that exploded, but all of the exhaust and everything should have gone down a proper channel. And I told them what I thought was wrong with the gun, and so we're waiting for a reply on that. So we would sure appreciate your prayers on that. My wife still can use her fingers. She goes just like this. And matter of fact, now, you know those... all right, so those babies in the back. She was telling me this before. You know who Nathan is? Okay, I get a this and I get a this. He's a prophet in the Old Testament that told David, "Thou art the man." And when he tells the story, "Thou art the man," I envision he puts his arm out like this, and he gets his finger, and that finger grows about 6 inches. And it gets crooked. You know, because when you get that finger of conviction pointed at you, doesn't it just seem like it just goes, Wah? And it gets real close to your nose. Anyways, I forgot why I was telling that story. Oh, my wife's finger. That's what she does to me now. She's got that finger that she points out, because you know wives, and they preach at the husbands all the time. By the way, that's where Brother Kelly and I get our best messages. When our wives preach at us, I'm like, hold that thought for a second. What was the next point? But now she's got that finger that she can just point at me now. But we sure appreciate your prayers. Let me tell you a little bit about the church. We were kind of looking at our numbers, and this time last year we were running 10 or 11. This year we're running 17. So we're on the right direction. We're going in the right direction. We've got some new people. We just had a young lady saved. She's 23. They have a little 6-month-old. We're praying for her husband. Her husband is agnostic. He just doesn't believe that there's a God, there's a devil, there's a heaven, there's a hell. He just doesn't believe that. And I'm working on him. So be praying for Jonathan if you think about it. Pray for Jonathan. But his wife got saved, and my wife is in discipleship with her. And Lord willing, sometime soon we're going to be able to baptize her and get her into the membership. One of my guys is preaching tonight. I'm scared. I'm going to call up the church later and find out how things went, and I hope there's not going to be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Please don't ever do that again. You can't ever leave. Just enjoying the fact that I've got 2 men that I can leave the church with, at least on a Wednesday night, and do it with confidence. And so continue to pray for our church. We certainly will appreciate that. I was afraid when your pastor was talking about the love offering and helping me get out of his house, some of you don't want us to leave. And so I'm thinking, well, there's not going to be any love offering at all. A big zero. Turn in your Bibles to Mark chapter 4, please. Mark chapter 4. I've been struggling all day. I've been telling your pastor I've got it down to 2. And even walking in the church door, I'm like, well, I could go this one or I'll go this one. And, well, it's time. And so if the sun doesn't go down, maybe I'll preach both of them. Amen? Would that be all right? I'll learn that love offering. That'll make sure that they give me a love offering to get us out of here. Man, that guy preached 2 messages. He just went on and on and on, never shut up. Are you in Mark chapter 4? All right, let's turn to verse 35. Mark chapter 4 and verse number 35. And the same day when the even was come, he saith unto them, let us pass over to the other side. And when they had sent away the multitude, they took him even as he was in the ship. And there were also with them other little ships. And there arose a great storm of wind, and the waves beat into the ship, so that it was now full. And he was in the hinder part of the ship, asleep on a pillow. And they awake him, and say unto him, Master, carest thou not that we perish? And he arose and rebuked the wind, and said unto the sea, Peace, be still. And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. And he said unto them, Why are ye so fearful? How is it that you have no faith? I want you to get the story. Understand what's going on here. The Lord just gets done preaching for a whole day. And they put him into the ship, and the Lord, even though he's 100% God, is also 100% man, and he's tired. He's tired. So as they step onto the boat, and I'm just going to make a supposition. I always do this in my church. When I tell you something that John Sugar believes that's not necessarily in the scriptures, I stand off to the side. It says that Jesus was in the hinder part of the boat with a pillow, right? I always wonder who gave him the pillow. And it's my belief, and that's why I'm standing over here, Peter handed him a pillow. And I'll tell you why. You know, when those disciples stepped onto the boat, are you looking at me? I'm muted. I'm going to have to preach all of that over again. I am back. When those disciples step onto the boat, do you remember what the disciples were before they were disciples? At least Peter and those other 2 guys. Right? They were master fishermen. They knew the sea. They knew everything about the boat. There wasn't anything about the boat that they didn't know. And I'm sure as soon as they stepped foot on the ship, they said, we're home. Right? And I'm thinking, Peter's always first at everything. He's the guy that, shoots off at the mouth. Amen? He is. I'm Peter, by the way. So Peter probably steps on the boat, and he knows exactly where a pillow is. He walks over to the pillow, and he says, Lord, I know you're tired. Have a pillow. You go into the back, and you rest. We got this. We got it. We're home. We're master fishermen. Matter of fact, Peter owned his own company, and he had a couple of other boats with him. I'm home. If there's anything that I know this. Lord, you go in the back, here's a pillow. You rest. We got it. Do you see where I'm going with this? We need to be careful about saying to the Lord, I got it. I got it. I'm going to get the guys tonight. Guys, how many of you have a skill? How many of you know how to do stuff? All right. Some of the stuff that I can do some carpentry. I can work with wood. When I was in the military, I knew how to load bombs. I was a master bomb loader. Matter of fact, they would ask me to troubleshoot the systems. Much like Brother Glenn. He and I were the same career field. It is great to run into somebody that did the same thing you did. I can say bomb loader, and he's like, I'm right there. I was good at it, and they would ask me to troubleshoot systems. There are some things that I can do. There are a couple of things that I'm a master at, that I feel pretty skillful at. And I'm like, I don't need any help. You know how other guys will come up, oh, so you're laying tile on the floor, huh? Well, do you do this, and are you doing this? I'm like, I got this. Right? Have you seen my tile saw? Don't you know I got it? Can't you look at my tools and see I got this? I got it. And somebody else will come and try to give us advice. Guys, am I right? I got this. Do you guys have any skills that you're like that with? Yeah, I got it. Here's some fishermen. Lord, we got this. And what happened to them? Well, in the passage here, let's look at it again. Verse 36, verse 35, by the way, doesn't the Lord say we're going to go to the other side? And probably every preacher says this. When the Lord says we're going to the other side, you know what you ought to be thinking? We're going to make it to the other side. He says in verse 35, the last part there, let us pass over unto the other side. He doesn't get into the boat and say, hope you guys make it. Warm and be filled. They're going to make it. But he's got to teach a lesson. He's got to teach them a lesson because, again, these master fishermen, when they step onto the boat, they know every inch of the boat. They know everything that everything does on the boat. And by the way, they also know the sea. They could tell you, just standing on whatever part of the shore that they were standing on, where the fishing spot is. And they probably have fish stories. I remember that one year we would go over to that spot. There's a little cove over there. It got a little deep a little bit. We threw our nets in over there. And whoo, the fish we caught that day. Our boat leaned just a little bit. But because I know what I'm doing in the boat, I counterbalanced it. I threw some weights over in this corner, and our boat straightened out, and we sailed home just fine. Peter could probably tell you all of that. And he could probably tell you every square inch of the Sea of Galilee and what it was going to do and when. And he could look at the sky and he says, the wind is going to come, we got to get to shore. There's a storm coming, we got to get to shore. Or, yeah, there's some wind coming, but that's not going to be a bad one because it's coming from such and such a direction. He knew. He knew. But I think the Lord had to teach him a lesson. Verse 36, and when they had sent away the multitude, they took him even as he was in the ship. And by the way that he was tired. The way that he was tired. And there were also other little ships. And there arose a great storm of wind, and the waves beat into the ship so that it was now full. And by the way, it was now full of water. Gee, I wonder who started the storm. Here's me again. I'm going to stand over here. I wonder if Jesus isn't laying back on his pillow with a little smirk on his face. That was me. Hey guys, watch. He couldn't say hey guys because he was wanting to teach them a lesson, but he's like, watch this. He probably had a little smile on his face, and he's like, I got to teach these guys a lesson. What a teaching moment I've got right here. They gave me a pillow. And basically when they gave me a pillow, they said, no, Lord, we got this. And he said to the wind, and he said to the rain, and he said to the sea, let's get them. I believe that. I believe he started the storm because he wanted to teach those disciples a lesson. It doesn't matter how much you know. It doesn't matter how many skills you have. It doesn't matter your proficiency level in that skill. You still need Jesus. Right. And he was showing them that. He was showing them that. Master fishermen, master boatmen. No, Lord, here, have a pillow. Go to the back. We got this. So he sends the storm. And what are those, by the way, master boat? Have you seen, I might get into a little trouble. I'm going to apologize now. And if I say something offensive, I'm sorry. But have you seen a little effeminate guy who was a master boatman? I have not ever seen one. You know, you think of a sailor, what do you think of? Well, I think of Popeye. He's got those big old forearms, right? That's what I think of. And nobody, not even Brutus, could beat Popeye when he had the spinach. He wasn't some little effeminate guy. He knew how to handle himself. And you know what? I don't think Peter, James, and John were small men. I think if we got into an arm wrestling match with them, they could take us. I don't see them being weak or scared easily, frightened easily. But look at what happens when the storm comes up. In the next verse, and he was in the hinder part of the ship, and by the way, it always makes me smile, asleep on the pillow. And I'm thinking he's just smiling while he's sleeping there, because he knows what's going on. And he comes up and he says, and they awake him, and say unto him, Master, carest not that we perish. These are master fishermen that have been on the sea. This is home for them. And the ship and the storm is so rough that they run like little girls to the master and they say, don't you care that we're dying? What is wrong with you? Why are you sleeping with the pillow that we gave you? Don't you care? Get the picture here. These are men. They know the sea. They know the boat. And they run like little girls. By the way, sorry. That was probably offensive too, wasn't it? How many of you girls could take him? They're sizing me up right now. I could take you. Watch what you're saying. I think still with a smile, we go into verse number 39, and he arose and rebuked the wind and the sea. And he said, you know, it doesn't matter your proficiency, you still need me. That's what he says. Peace be still. Who is it that calms the storm? The master. It certainly wasn't those master boatmen. It certainly wasn't the master fishermen. And then he looks at, oh, by the way, and the wind ceased and there was a great calm. I can imagine that it was There were waves. The boat was filled with water, so the waves were coming crashing in. And I'm thinking waves are coming from every direction. The front, the back, the sides. That's all just coming into the water like this. He says, peace, be still. Zoop. Like glass. That fast. That probably scared them. Well, it says, verse 41, I didn't read this before, they feared exceedingly. They moved from running and screaming like little girls to running and screaming like little babies. They feared exceedingly, not because the storm, but because he calmed the storm. But let's look at verse number 40, because I got to get to the rest of the message. He said unto them, why are ye so fearful? Why are you running around like little girls? Aren't you at home on the boat? Didn't you hand me the pillow? Didn't you say, no, Lord, we got this. We got it. You've been preaching all day. You've been doing landlubber stuff. We're now on the ocean. We'll take care of it. Can you hear them? They thought of him as a landlubber. Why? He was a carpenter's son. He was the carpenter's son. He worked on the land. They gave him a pillow. Get in the back of the boat. You just rest back there. We'll take care of it. He's sitting there smiling. I think he's got just that little, that knowing grin. You're going to get it. Why are you so fearful? How is it that you have no faith? And I want to talk about faith this evening. How is it that you have no faith? I've got skill. I'm pretty proficient at some things. And sometimes I'm pretty smart. I'm pretty proficient at some things. And these guys, when they had their whole world that they knew rocked, they lost faith. How is it that you have no faith? Because the Lord said at the beginning, we're going to the other side. That's where we're going. How is it that you have no faith? So I want to talk just for a couple of minutes about this matter of faith. In Hebrews chapter 10 and verse 38. Hebrews chapter 10 and verse number 38. It says this, now the just shall live by faith. I don't read anywhere in the scriptures that the just shall live by their skills. The just shall live by their knowledge. The just shall live by their anything. Because the word there is in there. Isn't it? We cannot rest and we cannot trust and we cannot rely on me or us. Everything that we do, we must rely on Jesus. The just shall live by faith. It doesn't matter if you're going to the same job that you've gone to for the last 50 years and you know the job inside and out. Don't give Jesus a pillow. Go into your job that you know you've done day in, day out. Go in every single day by faith. Because you don't know when a storm is going to come. You don't know. And sometimes the Lord likes to have a little teaching moment with us, doesn't he? You thought you knew that. Gets a little smile on his face. Boom, storm. We run around like little girls, don't we? I don't know what we're going to do. I don't know how we're going to get out of this trouble. I don't know what I'm going to do about this financial problem. I don't know what I'm going to do about this medical problem. I don't know what I'm going to do about my house. I don't know what I'm going to do about my car. I don't know what I'm going to do about my kids and my grand. You see, we lose our minds when we lose faith. The just shall live by faith. Isn't that great for a preacher to say, you ought to live by faith? How many of you ever want to look at the preacher and ask him a question? Well, how do I do that? All right, preacher, you say live by faith, but how? Anybody want to ask that question? Somebody asked me that question. Oh, thank you. Well, let me tell you how. And that's why I have the chair up here. How many of you came in here tonight and just plopped down on the pew? How many of you did that? How many of you just came in and sat right down like this? In the pew that you're sitting in. Anybody? Everybody? Didn't you just do that? Did you just plop right on the pew? How many of you you felt a little tired, so you really did plop? You're like, poof. Yeah. You exercised faith. You trusted that the pew was going to do what the pew does. Hold me up. How many of you, when you go home and you flick on the light switch, expect the lights to come on? Right? How many of you freak out when they don't? But how many of you expect that to happen? I flick the switch, I expect the lights to come on, right? That's because we expect electricity to do what electricity does. I flick a switch, something turns on. We expect that to do what it does. None of us came into the church tonight and we didn't grab the chair and we didn't go over to the pew and we didn't... Well, man, I sure hope that holds me up. If you're over there. It held me. How many of you did that tonight? Anybody? You didn't check out the chair? You didn't go over to it and look at the legs and say, okay, they look sturdy. Nobody's come over and cut them. How many of you are sitting in the seat you always sit in? Go like this if you're sitting in the seat that you always sit in. Okay, no, because somebody else is sitting in your seat, right? So, but if you fall, they were after her. We don't check to see if they're cut. You know, the legs. Well, it doesn't look like anybody did anything to it. It ought to hold me up. Right? Not one of us did that. Not one of us came into the church tonight, and here's how I know. I watch people when they come into church. Not one person did I see do this. Not one of you. You know what you did? I'm not giving a love offering because I don't want him to go. The just shall live by faith. What is living by faith? We trust the chair is going to do what the chair does. We trust the pew is going to do what the pew does. We trust the light switch is going to do what the light switch does. Trust God that God's going to do what God does. That's living by faith. I'm going to trust God that God's going to do what God does. What does God do? What does He do? Thank you. He does everything. He's created everything. Everything we can see, think, hear, stand on, sit on, He created. He's holding it together. He's holding all of creation together. He's got a big job. But you know what? Even while he's doing his big job, he wants you to live by faith. Have you ever seen... I'm out of breath now because I had to come up and down these stairs. I'm trusting my lungs are going to do what lungs are supposed to do. Take in air. Have you seen videos from the Creation Institute or the Creation Museum? The one on the stars and creation? We showed it at our church not too long ago. And man, you want to talk about feeling small. He would take the moon, and the moon would be like this big. And then it would show the earth, and the earth would be this big, and the moon was this big. And then they would show like Neptune. And Neptune was this big, and the earth was this big, and the moon was this big. And then they showed Saturn. Not Saturn, but Jupiter. Jupiter's this big, Neptune's this big, the earth is this big, and you can't even see the moon anymore. We haven't even got to the sun yet. So now we show the sun. The sun is this big, Jupiter is this big, you can't hardly see Neptune down here, and the earth is gone. And then they show us the next star. By the way, I think you can fit 1 million Earths into the sun. I think you can fit 1 million Earths into the sun. You can fit 1 million suns into the big dog star, the Canis Majoris. Do you know how small that makes our sun look? If you can put 1 million of our suns into the big dog, by the way, that's translated into English from Latin. Canis Majoris is big dog. You put 1 million of our suns into the big dog, and you can put 1 million of our earths into our sun. How big does that make you feel? Doesn't that make you feel really tiny, 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 tiny? 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 But you know who God cares about? Little old me. Little old me. He wants me to live by faith. He loved me so much that he came to this earth. He loved me so much that he died for me. And he was buried. And he rose again the third day. He's taking care of creation, but he loves me so much that he cares what happens to me, and he wants me to live by faith. He wants me to plop down on him, if I can use that. Just like we plop down on the pew, just like we plop down on a chair. We don't inspect it, we don't check it out, but how many times do we check out God? Oh, man. What do you mean you want me to come to church 3 times a week? How bad do you think I am? Well, I read into the scriptures that the heart is deceitfully wicked. And what is it? The imaginations and the intents of the heart are only wicked continually, or only evil continually. That's what I see. That's what he sees. You want me to come to church 3 times a week? We try out God, don't we? We look at God and we say, I don't think that's for me. What do you mean you want me to tithe? I'm not making it on 100%. You want me to give 90? Or you want me to give 10% and live on 90%? God, I don't think you can do that. Oh, and then on top of that, what do you mean give to missions? What do you mean give Brother Sugar a love offering? What do you mean? Don't we try out God? What do you mean get up every morning and pray and read my Bible and put on the spiritual armor every day? What do you mean? Don't you know the skills that I have? I love this one. Don't you know who I am? I am the John Sugar, the one that you guys have heard about. Don't you know who I am? You know, when I put my pants on, they hover there, and I hover over to them, and I fall down into them. The only reason why my feet are touching the ground right now is so you don't freak out. You want to see me walk right straight back there? No. Because some of you say, yeah, we want to see that, bloop. But don't you know who I am? Don't you know how long I've been saved? Don't you know how many times I've read through the Bible? Don't you know how many times I've prayed? Don't you know how long I've been going to this church? Don't you know my grandpappy helped me build this church? Every single day, we've got to get up with faith in Jesus. Because we're going to hand him a pillow and he's going to get a little smirk on his face. We need to live by faith every single day. The just shall live by faith. Pastor, come on up.
Love that thought. I love that thought. Now, let me put a little Pastor Senn spin on this. Simply because Pastor Senn gets guilty of this. You know, you wake up in the morning and you think, I'm proficient at life. I don't need anybody. I got answers. Whatever comes my way, it's been coming my way for 53 years. I got it. I got it. And you know, we're all like that. Every one of us is like that. And we go through our day, and we actually go through our day a lot of times without God. Just by ourselves. And things start falling apart. You know what we do? Well, I got a tool for that. And I can fix that. Something else falls apart during the day. Oh, I can handle this. And you know when we call on God? When we're frustrated. When we're about ready to bite our wife's head off. When we're about ready to lose all dignity. That's when we call on Jesus. You know, I've had to learn a lot of times the hard way. You get up in the morning and you do your devotion, you pray. You say, Jesus, would you walk with me today? Or let me walk with you. We'll hit this together. I've gone through the days sometimes, just maybe having a little bit more difficult day. And people will see me, and I'm talking, and there's nobody there. You know what I'm doing? Jesus, I need some help. And I do that. I do that. Just because I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be that guy that says, I got it. Because when the guy says, I got it, that means we ain't got it. It means we got trouble. Great thought tonight. Great thought. So we stand to our feet tonight. Miss Kashan, could you come and play Just As I Am or something like that? Tonight, the message is not targeted towards a specific need or a specific person. It's targeted to all of us because we're all in need of that help. As Miss Kashan begins to play, maybe we just need to come to Jesus.